Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and today we're doing a sub install on this Ford F-150. In this video, we're going to show you how to run all the wire, power ground, RCA, remote turn on wire, and sub wire inside the vehicle to an aftermarket radio that we've already installed. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so a couple of different places you can mount an amplifier. There is some space up underneath here. We're kind of test fitting our monoblock amp underneath the driver's seat. This may be a good solution depending on the size of the amplifier, or as an alternative, you can actually put one back behind the seat here. Okay, so we have a placement for our amplifier. Now the seat's all the way forward, so as the seat goes back, there's plenty of space to cover the amplifier. It sits right in between those 2 feet, flush on the floor. And we looked in the front, there's plenty of space for the vent for airflow. So we're gonna go ahead and use this location for amplifier. Let's go ahead and start running our power wire from the battery all the way to the amp area. Now we've popped the hood here. Our battery is on the passenger front side. And we're gonna go ahead and use this post here. We got to clean up some corrosion, but we'll use that post. We'll mount our fuse holder here, and this is the axis we need to get inside the cabin. There's this little nipple here that sticks on out. You can actually cut that off, and allows you to run wire through the factory grommet into the cabin, and that'll gain us the axis we need to run our wire to our amp. Okay, so we went ahead and cut that little end off, that nipple there. And then I use a little soap and water just to lube everything up. And a little middle hanger that I fished through there. And then on the other end, I was able to pull it in. And what I'm going to do is now attach our 8-gauge wire that our amp requires to the end of this and go ahead and pull that on through into the cabin. Okay, so we got all that taped up. Everything's lubed up with soap and water. Let's go ahead and pull it through from the inside. Now that's where my wire comes through. We're gonna go ahead and just pull. Okay, pull that on through. Once that hole was done and everything's nice and lubed up, it actually slips nice and easy through that grommet. The fortunate thing is it's also sealed up and around the wire, so you shouldn't have any leaks or any problems with that. So we're gonna go ahead and pull the wire length through that we need. We're gonna go up and over the transmission tunnel and down to the driver's seat. All right, so that's where we went up and over the transmission tunnel, down that side, up and around. Now we'll pull off panels to actually run their wire properly, but right now we're just measuring length. So that's about the length that we need. Now let's go ahead and start tucking it under carpet and get our fuse holder under the hood all mounted. So I had a little piece of 1/8 inch ABS in the shop here, and I actually went ahead and just made a mount for a fuse holder, and yeah, got it all mounted and pre-drilled into the kind of the battery shroud here, nice and solid. And from there we'll just go straight to the positive post of the battery. Okay, so we got our fuse holder mounted. It's nice and solid, it's not going anywhere. We've got our length of wire ready to go to be placed on the positive post when ready. And then we got everything zip tied nice and clean right through the firewall. We're basically done underneath the hood, but we want to get our amp all connected before we even thinking about getting this connected to the positive post, just for safety. So let's finish running our power wire inside the cabin and start on our ground. Okay, so we've started working on the ground here. Now I did pop these panels off just so we have a little more space, all held on with clips. We found a factory ground right there, and it's an 8mm. We pulled out the bolt and the ground that was there and cleaned the paint with a wire brush. Looks like that guy there. And we're gonna use that as our factory grounding location. And we're about at the maximum length that ground really should be, but we're gonna run it there, right up to our amp. Got our positive and negative ready to go. We'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. We got the seat back as well. Each seat bolt is a 15mm, and using those, I just tuck the seat back so I have plenty of space to work here. And so we're gonna go ahead and get our ground hooked up and start hooking up the terminals on our amplifier. Okay, so we got our ground all in there, and we put the factory ground back in, so that's all good to go. Ran that down. Now I have the amp just kind of here floating until we put the seat back in so we can truly mount it to the floor. But we got the positive now hooked up with spade terminals, negative hooked up as well. And we have speaker wire that we ran through there as well, and that just goes back, hanging out for a second. We haven't hooked it up to anything yet. And then also we ran our RCAs and ran that through here, and we have our RCAs and remote turn on wire. We got to run this up to the radio, which is an aftermarket radio. We've already installed it in a previous video. We'll throw a card and a link in the description in case you want to check that on out. We don't want to run it necessarily right along with the power wire, just to reduce the likelihood of interference. So as we come through there, we're actually going to fish the wire straight down, over, up, and then to the aftermarket radio here in the dash. So that's kind of where we are at this point. We're going to go ahead and start working that wire up there to the base of the stereo. We're going to have to pop out the radio here temporarily so we can run that wire up and get everything connected behind the radio. At that point, besides hooking up the sub there in the back, we're just about done. All right, so we got the amp all wired. End caps are back on. Again, we haven't mounted it down because we got to put the seat down first and then mount the amp to the carpet here. We're going to put some ABS plastic underneath the carpet so we have somewhere for the amp to mount to. But other than that, we'll reassemble the seat here. And then over here, we finished our RCAs and our remote turn on wire, just out by kind of the accelerator pedal there. And then we're going to go ahead and start fishing them up. We got to pop the radio out and plug everything in. But we're getting super close. All right, so with the amp all hooked up, we went ahead and now hooked up the positive on the post there. We cleaned up a lot of the corrosion there. Terminals are in a lot better shape. So at this point, we're done underneath the hood. Okay, so we need to go ahead now pop the radio out just so we can hook up our RCAs to the sub output on the radio, as well as the remote turn on wire on the radio to trigger the amp to turn on. We already have really a video on how to pull this out, so we'll go ahead and show most of that. If you want that full tutorial, again, go ahead and check out the description. We'll have other video on how we installed this new radio. Okay, so we have the radio out here. We plugged our RCAs into the sub output, hooked up our remote turn on wire, which will trigger the amp to turn on when the radio turns on. And that's all we had to do back here. So we're gonna get the dash all put back together, get our sub all mounted up, and do a test. So we went ahead and ran our sub wire here, got that all ready to go. We'll just need to hook it up to the box. We need to just put in the bolts, but we're gonna go ahead and tune the amp before we totally mount it down. Radio is all back in and cleaned up. Panels are all back on. That's about it for the install. Let's go ahead and get everything tuned up and button things up. Okay, so we got our amplifier all mounted there. It actually fits really nice. The seat's all the way forward, so as soon as you pull the seat back, it'll be nice and protected underneath the seat. Yeah, that's basically it here. We got our sub all hooked up. That's about it for the install. If you guys have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. Thanks guys for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.